Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on DisneyPlus.com. A quick news update for you guys on how Disney is spending billions less on content for Disney Plus. But before we go any further, make sure you do hit that subscribe button to keep up with the latest Disney Plus news. So as you can probably tell, generally now there's a lot less content dropping onto Disney Plus and Hulu than there used to be. Especially during the streaming boom of a couple of years ago, where we were getting new originals each and every week, sometimes multiple times a week, multiple days a week, we were getting new original shows. And that's all kind of been dropping off. I mean, we've definitely noticed a big reduction in the amount of Marvel and Star Wars shows, drastically being reduced, which is probably a good thing, so they can improve the quality of those shows and make them better, because some of them have been a little bit dodgy. Also, they've been cutting the costs on some of the shows. For example, like Secret Invasion cost over $200 million to make. Something like Agatha was barely over $40 million. So massive difference in terms of spending. So obviously we are seeing a lot less content being created. This past week, Disney CFO Hugh Johnston took part in the quarterly financial results investors call and was asked about Disney trimming its content budget by $1 billion from $24 billion a year down to $23 billion a year. So he went on to say, first, in terms of cost cutting as a company, we're focused constantly on identifying opportunities that where we're spending money perhaps less efficiently and looking for opportunities to do it more efficiently. That's not only a once a year kind of thing, that's not a once a month kind of thing. That's something that we do every day of the year. It's part of what a good management team does, and we do think that we're a good management team in that regard. So we're going to continue to identify opportunities to redeploy money in order to make the company both higher growth and ultimately more profitable. And I think this is definitely a key thing. We have seen them being drastically reducing the amount of content they're creating, and also trying to reduce the budgets of the films and the movies because they're just spending too much. They got a little bit carried away, and a lot of this was trying to keeping up with Netflix and trying to take them over. And I also think the biggest problem for Disney ultimately was that they had too many different outputs. You had all the linear different channels, and you had Disney Plus and Hulu and ESPN Plus, and you had all of these different ways, cinemas, etc. And money was being spent in every different direction. So when combined, they were spending a lot of money, but you weren't necessarily seeing the benefits of this in the same way, because a Disney Channel show the budget was being spent there rather than with Disney Plus. So their money was being spent all over the place, and also generally, you can really tell with Disney Plus and Hulu, we are getting a lot less new content. Also, even with the linear channels, they're getting a lot less content. They're not getting as many new shows. It's all being shared much more between all the channels, which makes sense. If you're making a brand new show, you want to put it out on Disney Plus, put it out on linear, makes more sense to do so. Same thing with movies. Most of the movies now are going to cinemas first, make some money, and then get released on streaming, because ultimately putting movies straight onto Disney Plus wasn't making them any money. So we've seen a big reduction. Now, interestingly enough, we got a little bit of a look here at what they've been spending. So back in 2018, Disney was spending about $23 billion on content. So that includes theatrical, television, but also, and it's important to note, ESPN content. So that's a big element that costs money. Sports like NFL, NBA, all that comes into it. Things then started to ramp up in 2019. Obviously, that was the launch of Disney Plus with $27.8 billion. In 2020, increased again by another billion, $28.6 billion. In 2021, it reduced a little bit down to $25 billion, probably more likely due to the impact of the pandemic, and they weren't able to film as much. But then in 2022, the budget absolutely ballooned, going up to $33 billion. At which point, this is the time when the Wall Street was looking at all the different companies and going, you're spending too much, where's the profit? Where are you bringing us any money in? We ended up seeing Bob Iger come back as CEO. Bob Chapek got booted out, and he then went on a big cost cutting spree. The following year in 2023, they ended up spending $27 billion, and as I said, in 2024, $23 billion, bringing it right back to 2018 funding. So a big boom of streaming when they were spending money on loads of stuff, yet they've come back down the other side. And again, they want to make it profitable. And let's be honest, it's a lot easier making Disney Plus and Hulu profitable if you're spending $10 billion less. I don't think we're going to see any big differences moving forward. I think ultimately, as they put together Hulu and Disney Plus in the US at some point, we are seeing the benefits of that, less content. But also, I think the The less pressure on Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, etc. to put out as much stuff means that they're better quality, which is good for us. But now they also can kind of focus on each release at a time. So when a new show like Paradise just dropped, which is a fantastic show, definitely check that one out. I think it captures the audience a little bit more because it gets more of the attention. That is the big new release. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Now, no, this is a little bit of a kind of a bad thing in some ways for us as consumers. You know, we're subscribing, we're paying more per month for Disney Plus, but we are getting a lot less. You could argue the quality has improved. We're not getting a load of those fluff shows, you know, like there were some really bad TV shows being made during the most expensive time. We were getting, you know, cookery shows that were awful, and we had a load of like live action stuff like Big Shot and Willow that just were not clicking with audiences, and all that kind of stuff has really been trimmed back as they now just trying to concentrate on quality over quantity, and that's a key thing. Now I do think obviously as subscribers we are getting less, but if they kept churning out the amount that they were doing, the cost was just going to keep increasing, and I'd rather have less, that's better, than having lots more, which is kind of just vanilla, average, doesn't necessarily need to be done that way. Now, know that there's also going to be some other people saying, well, maybe instead of spending all of these billions of dollars on original new content, how about getting some of this old stuff that's still sat in the library that you're not using, get that on there? Because I definitely can see people are going to be saying that, and I agree. I mean, there are issues of bringing older stuff onto Disney Plus, licensing, music. You've also got residuals, also getting them good enough quality. Maybe they're not going to... They're sat on thousands of movies and shows that they could bring to their library and make some money from it, from advertising and like selling it on other platforms, even licensing it out to, I don't know, Netflix or Amazon or Tubi or something. But it does feel like they're so obsessed with making new content that they're not really looking at the old stuff. You know, they removed $1 billion+ worth of original content as well, which just failed, and that's why they got rid of like Willow and those kind of shows, which helped the books. But hopefully in the future they could bring these back. But it does feel like they've got all this content just sat there that they don't use, that they could do. It ain't going to cost $1 billion to bring all that stuff back. But I do think that's something that they should start looking at now that Disney Plus is becoming a little bit more profitable and is making money each month. It might open the door for that kind of thing to start looking at them. But it does feel like, spending all that money on original new content, but not utilizing some of that library content that they've already spent money on. It's already been done, and yeah, it's interesting. But I wouldn't expect to see Disney spending increase much more. I think most of these studios are doing the same thing. They're being much more conservative in terms of what they're spending. Lots of benefits to that. I think actually having less Marvel and Star Wars shows, having smaller budgets is better for them rather than just... I think they just got out of control. I think there was like an open check and they were just spending as much as they possibly could without really any thought of how this was going to get paid off. But now they're definitely pulling things back. But yeah, that funding dropped. Who knows what they're going to be spending in 2025? They are going to continue that level. I mean, by comparison, Netflix spends about $17 billion on content in 2024, which is remarkably less than Disney does. But again, Netflix doesn't have theatrical films, it doesn't have linear channels, it doesn't have multiple streaming services, one output. And I think when Disney gets everything together, it'll be a little bit more streamlined, but they've still got to do it. It's a long way off, but unfortunately, we can definitely see. I mean, I really do feel the fact of how much less I'm writing about and talking about in terms of how many new shows and films. You can just see that there's a lot less. I mean, the monthly lists that we've seen on Disney Plus the last 18 months, especially in the US, they've been awful. They've just, sometimes we're barely getting a few shows new a month, and subscribers have been leaving, unsurprisingly. Again, when they merge stuff together, people might feel a little bit more inclined to think that it's worthwhile. But yeah, it's they've put the prices up, they've cut the spending, and both of which has managed to bring the balance right. And I think that's not going to be changing anytime soon. But let me know, what do you think of Disney kind of cutting back on how much it's spending on content? Do you agree with it? Do you not? Love to hear your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Nice to see you guys soon. Laters.